was watching a bunch of Rain's VODs, and I noticed that she's very aggressive about positioning. Let's say the enemy has a Warden frontline, and with like an Alawi 2 upgraded, and Alawi 2 is on one side, and then they have the rest of their Wardens on this side. So she'll try to put her carry on the side with the weak Wardens to try to kill them off, assuming she's like weaker than them. Just
Yeah.
to your point of like not getting stuck on the super tank and then not killing anything. But so let's say that there's two people who are positioned in that pattern, but then the third person, let's say, is like a duelist board that could wrap on you if you go on this side. Would you just take that height as an EV play and be like, okay, I want to try to optimize minimum losses on the two Warden boards, but then I could take a maximum loss against the duelist? Or are you thinking about, okay, I'll try to find the right balance between the two?
There is a prioritization that I like to use. The first is if I'm trying to win, I always position for the strongest person in my rotation. In general, if there are three people in your rotation, the strongest person will probably be far stronger than the other two. In which case, if I'm trying to win streak, the two weaker people, they're going to matter way less, right? It doesn't really matter as much how I position for them versus the strongest person in the rotation. The second thing is, like, in terms of wrapping, right? In general, so let's say there, you have your two sort of considerations, whether or not the duelist player will wrap on you, and whether or not you can, get to kill the weaker units on the other person's front line, right? I think that there's some ways you can position where you can kind of essentially address both situations, right? So one is making sure that you don't leave any potential areas in your front line where they can like snipe out first unit here. So like, let's say this is your front line, right? And then, the melee carries come in like this way. So what happens usually with wrapping is like one of the edges of your front line gets killed, and then that melee unit moves around, right? Onto your back line, kind of like that. So one thing that you might want to do is might want to make sure, okay, whatever unit that I have right next to this edge unit, hopefully is not going to be dead by the time this unit starts to move this direction, because then they get redirected into the front line versus going to your back line. So if you can kind of manage that kind of scenario while also making sure that your carries are on the right side, that's sort of, I think, the sweet spot. That's sort of like, obviously it's not very easy, right? It's definitely not the case, but you just have to make sure, right? Like, it's with experience. What do you think is going to happen with their melee carry once they kill the current unit that they're hitting, right? Because, sometimes after the situation happens where you get wrapped on in a fight, just like look at your board and see like what exactly happened here that caused this unit to reach my backline that easily, right? How was it able to circumvent the rest of my front line? Is there some type of gap that I need to get filled in so that it re-aggroes onto another frontline unit, right? Is it, for example, I don't know, like if I have like the full line hugging the left wall or the right wall, maybe they're just like circling around, right? And just ignoring my front line completely, in which case you will have to make sure that there's like one hex away from the border so that they can't do that. There's like a lot of general things to look out for. I think the primary thing with anything is just, if you do lose the fight due to like wrapping or something like that, just pay attention to how your current board is and look at what you lost to, right? And figure out what happened there so that you can just prevent it from happening again. That's like the only thing is, one, I definitely prioritize the strongest person, because they're the one that either are going to do the most damage to you, or they're going to be the one that ends your win streak, right? And then just general positioning just to make sure things like wrapping doesn't happen.